Okay, everybody, welcome back. Another episode of Enter the Matrix. How are you, my good friend?
Doing okay.
Doing
Going through my own
okay?
transformations. Yeah.
Ah,
I was just doing a lot of energetic work on myself for the past 3 weeks. And it was like quite intense. Well, there was a lot of not just myself, just general energetic work. As a result, now it's all integrating, so I'm kind of in between worlds. Yeah.
Interesting. So,
So
so you're in between worlds. We're in between Matrix versions. There's a lot of
V5
stuff
and
going
V6.
on.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
here we are. Yeah.
So, where I'd like to go today, and then let's see again where these conversations take us.
Yeah.
I was thinking about popularity and virality and the basis of Matrix V6, right?
Mm.
So to start with, like if we're looking through that Matrix lens, um, what makes things or people actually go viral, right? Or people seemingly becoming popular out of nowhere, because we've seen a lot of that where suddenly somebody that we've never heard of is just they're everywhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, what's going on with that with the Matrix?
Well, I think there's a major difference between V5 and V6. V5, in previous episodes, we've chatted about all the a layer of distortions that was added to it by, let's call it, other civilizations, that were those distortions were optimizing for values of low vibrational civilizations, which is the current overall, if we broadly look at overall society, the values, you have pyramidal structure where the top layers get the most energy and the lower layers get less and less energy, and etc. The reason I'm mentioning this is because those add-ons on top of V5 Matrix were taking a lot of energy from many people from lower layers and reallocating them to people of choice at the top. And what I mean by that, it's like we've heard all these let's call them conspiracy, non-conspiracy stories about Hollywood, right? If you're part of a special club, then out of nowhere you're viral, right?
Yeah.
And that's that example of reallocation of energy. But that's not just it, because for that to actually work, there has to be an organic predisposition for that person to be popular. And what I mean by that, in one of the episodes, we chatted about how um, all this matrix has, like, per se, codes or energies. And Nikolai is born with specific types of energies, which are my predisposition. And let's say if there's no energy in me that predispositions me to be on a stage, no matter how much I try to be an actor, I will not, like, it will be just failed experiments. Yes, there are exceptions where you can, per se, sell your soul and have artificially pump energy from these accumulations of energy from lower layers through these structures. And that is possible. But they're smart. They actually choose people. So they're actually, I mentioned this quote in the past, and I finally checked who said that. JP Morgan said that millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. So people who are the helm of the current civilization extensively use all these instruments. And the reason I mention astrology is one of the modalities that can tell you the predisposition of a specific person, what types of energies they have or they don't. Then there's numerology, then there's human design, then there's the list goes on, gene keys. And hence, they got very smart. So let's keep playing the Hollywood secret club.
Yeah.
They find people who already have a predisposition to be supported by original V5 matrix without the add-ons, which is, oh, this person is supposed to be famous actor because they have all the energies to be the famous actor. Then they tell them, hey, we will make you famous actor. So they're basically selling them back their own energy. If you basically sign your soul away. If you sign this contract, which is in most of the scenarios, you're selling yourself away like
Mm-hmm.
a slave. But
Yeah.
in exchange, of course, you get all this popularity and etc. So first of all, they already pre-vetted you. They know the matrix will be supporting you to get into this viral popular position, and then on top of that, they pump energy. So yes, they do add energy, but in some scenarios, that person didn't even need additional energy. Matrix would have already promoted that person to a place of leadership, to a place of popularity, or whatever. So it is a very interesting, let's call it energetic game that is being played. Um, so as we're shifting to, well, let me also make a side note. So that's specifically about people, about like videos or events or etc. getting popular. Similarly, there's some kind of a predisposition of like energy where this is aligned with a vector of a matrix. Let's say somebody said something and the quote gets popular, not necessarily the person. So that quote or that statement could be just aligning with a major flow of energy of the planet. Let's say right now, if you actually look closely, doesn't matter if it's United States, Germany, Russia, or whatever, everybody's starting honestly speaking up against the politicians, including Putin, who previously like heavily filtered and censored, and people were like the bloggers who were supporting him for all these years are now speaking out because everybody's fed up. So this is an example of a specific energetic shift that's happening on a planet, which is we're shifting. We've chatted about in previous episode. We've shifted from the current version of governance, which was basically sold to us as a democracy, but there's no real democracy
Yeah.
on this planet. It's all like either it's U.S., Germany, or whatever. It's like manipulated heavily. So we're shifting to anarchy, which is self-governance. And as a result, because Matrix is supporting that movement, all these statements are being supported by the general energy of the Matrix or the universe. And those people are almost protected, whereas before they were not protected. So if you make such a statement, high chance you would just disappear in places like Russia or Belarus, Ukraine, and etc. Right? Whereas now nobody is disappearing because even if people try, the energy, like they're speaking in alignment with energy flow. So those are like the things that are unfolding that be behind the curtain, and we're going through interesting times where people who what I'm observing, people, let's say if we take the industry of spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
people who were popular are are and will rapidly decline. And we're speaking about people like Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, Eckhart Tolle, and it is this very entertaining theatrics that are unfolding right now. Um, so people who are like deeply following Tony Robbins, like there's this guy who was producing, like made Joe Dispenza who he is, Eckhart Tolle. He's like a producer for this new age spiritual guys.
Mm-hmm.
He is now recording videos against them, showing all the manipulations, all the weird things they're doing, the beings that they're connected to, and more or less basically through their construct selling away their followers to those beings and etc. And but the most hilarious part about that, I'm like listening to the video, I was like, yeah, the guy is spot on. And then like 2/3 of the video is like, but Christianity is gonna save us. So, and I just like broke out laughing because we got Joe Dispenza, Tony Robbins, all these egregors. Christianity is another dying egregor. And so what's happening, all these egregors are starting to fight with each other because the supply of energy is shrinking rapidly.
Mm.
And I'll expand that a little bit further. I've been having a lot of interesting conversations with some friends and people who I work with. What I'm observing as we're shifting, and we've talked about it maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 episodes ago, that as we're going to shift from Matrix V5 to V6, a lot of old constructs will start losing energy. So the construct of religion, let's say, the way it was designed, pyramidal structure, people at the top get a lot of energy. All the followers predominantly get averaged out. If you come in, once again, I'll use the vibrational levels at vibrational level 4.5, and let's say Christianity averaging at 6. It's probably below that now. Then you get this boost, so you think you've been saved by Jesus. In reality, it's not. Jesus is the egregor that reallocated energy of other followers of the religion to you, so you get a boost. So you think that's what helped you. So you do get a boost, but then you become a donor of your energy and you get stuck at that level where the egregor is. The challenge is, or not the challenge, actually, the beauty is of what's unfolding right now. All these people who haven't figured out how to connect with God directly. And when I say with God, you're actually connecting with your own consciousness or with your own soul and spirit, because that is the particle of God in us. People who haven't started figuring out how to do that are stuck in those egregors. People who have figured it out intuitively felt something is off with all these structures, Christianity, Joe Dispenza, psychedelics, and etc. And I'll explain why I'm throwing psychedelics in there a little bit later. So the ones who intuitively felt something is off with these constructs, energetic constructs, so they left and they started looking for other modalities that enable them to connect with their own higher structures on their own. No middleman, no layer in between. But those are the people that actually have energy and keep getting supplied with energy by their soul and spirit because they're going directly. The avatars that haven't figured it out, their souls are shutting down the supply of energy. So as a result, what we have, these energetic structures that have these followers that are rapidly declining in amount of energy accessible to them. Hence, the whole egregor is rapidly declining in the amount of energy it has. So before, at least when you went to Christianity for especially initial periods of time, there was at least somewhat of a fair energetic exchange. Let's say you in the beginning you get a boost, so you get a mortgage of energy, so you're oh, I was saved, and then you of course you make the payments, and you take 100 grand in mortgage, and over 30 years you pay like $1 million, right? And that's basically the construct of how it worked energetically. The same thing, right? You paid with interest quite a bit. But now what's happening, because nobody who is following these constructs, or almost nobody who's following those constructs, have any energy. This is shrinking, but everything in this universe, any life in any form, which including the egregors or this energetic contracts, want to survive and want to expand. So what it's starting to do is taking the leftover energies from the followers. And I've seen this now multiple times where previously, for example, I was part of Siddha Mahayoga meditation group, which is egregor as well. Previously, it gave you transcendental states, but it took some of your life energy in exchange. You experienced the blissful states, so as a result of that, it was easier for you to navigate life, maybe have some reflections and etc. So you were kind of, let's call it, hopefully we're moving forward, and as a result, your energetic throughput increased, so the payment you were making was not noticeable. But now, because people who've stayed in that egregor are people who haven't figured out how to connect directly, so this egregor is starting to tax them and take a lot of the energy. So they're being penalized drastically. So, and this is happening all across the board. So at the end, what's happening? So this guy who was producing Joe Dispenza shifted to Christianity, shitting on Joe Dispenza, Tony Robbins, because he's seen all the internals. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, he's still in the same place. He's still lost. But what it's indicating is all these egregors, previously they were kind of, yeah, we're New Age, we're playing in our field, and we're Christianity, and we're Siddha Mahayoga, and everybody plays in their field, and there was enough energy for everyone. But energy is shrinking rapidly. They're starting to fight between each other. And
it's to like me, gang cartels.
Exactly. To me, it's so it's just like we have front row seats to this unfolding. And for people who see what happened behind the veil, right? It's so entertaining how this guy is so sure, I found what's gonna save me. So he literally shifted from one egregor that was structured exactly the same way to another one that's structured exactly the same way. He got his little initial boost, little mortgage. He thinks he's being saved, but in reality, he has already started paying interest. What has changed, at least previously, you were given mortgage on this energy for like 30 years. Now when you're giving it like for a year with like some insane crazy interest rate. So that is basically what's unfolding, and that's just to tie in on psychedelics there. Psychedelics is basically the same concept, and by the way, up till around summer last year, these egregors were like, we spoke about them a bunch of times. We spoke about a bunch of teachers, and what I was saying was like,
Yep.
hey, like intuitively pick one and go and works through them. They were actually, the benefit you received comparing to the cost you paid was comparable. As a result, those were great instruments. But now when they started shrinking, they actually became substantial tax. So now people ask me the same question, oh, should I like check out Joe Dispenza and or like, for example, do ayahuasca or something like that? My answer is mostly no. Yes, you can still read the books of Joe Dispenza, and because he has like some great stuff, but make sure you do not connect to his egregors through his retreats or meditations or whatever the other mechanics are. Yes, consume the knowledge because he gathered some good knowledge. At the end of the day, he also like basically what he did. He same as I guess many people, they took a lot of Eastern knowledge and package it that makes it more accessible to a Western mind, which is like important work. So coming back to psychedelics created a concept of awakening because psychedelics allow you to enter the room with gods, or basically with your own god and with other gods, with other sometimes high vibration entities, many times, most of the times, low vibration entities that pretended to be gods, had put on the mask of gods. And it helped people. It alleviated like PTSDs and all that stuff, as that was the energetic exchange. Will give you relief, but you kind of gonna start worshiping us, you know, or you're gonna connect to our egregor. So now there is major flow back of energy from people who deeply connected to those egregors, who feel like ayahuasca or MDMA or LSD were savior to them at some point in life. So now
Mm.
all these egregors are starting to suck life energy out of those people. And it gets even trickier with psychedelics. So what I've observed many times now, what they do is, as part of the saving you, you have the same as with a religion, very similar, but uses different technicality. Gives you a boost, energetic boost by relieving of your heavy emotions or stuckness or whatever it is, right? And then it inserts a middleman between you and your soul and spirit, or altogether changes the IP address for your soul and spirit. So when you're sitting in meditation or prayer or doing whatever, whatever, using whatever modality, trying to connect to your own higher self, it's actually connecting to the structure of that egregor, and it
Mm.
can feed you whatever you want. You're thinking you're connecting to your higher self, but you're not connecting to higher self. You're connecting to egregor of ayahuasca or egregor of LSD and whoever is managing that. And it starts feeding you, but you perceive you're connected to your soul because you don't have any sober experience, or I shouldn't say, a lot of people who awaken through psychedelics rarely have sober experience of connecting to own soul and spirit. So they don't really know what it feels like, so they don't have a something to compare to because they always went to the room with gods using this vessel or this vehicle, right? And so now you're thinking you're going and praying to God, your own soul and spirit, but in reality, you're just like, the egregor of ayahuasca is like, yeah, let's tell this person that they should do this, and like completely takes them off their path, right? So that's another thing. Now there were in the past 2 weeks, I've been clearing this up for multiple people. This
Oh, really?
rerouting, yeah, and not everybody gets it because some people do use these modalities and they don't they don't like kind of dive into this ritualistic parts, or they don't start even subconsciously worshiping even a little bit to those modalities. Okay, that was cool experience. Like, because I had a bunch, I was like of the experience, but it was a long time ago. And like, to be honest, I've cleansed myself so much of every possible thing. I haven't even checked if those egregors install something in me, but I clearly see them in other people because like I've processed, and probably as part of that cleanse, I've cleared that out for myself. But in other people, like I've had real experience where I'm trying to regress a person, and to regress a person to a past life, we use a method of going through higher self. So first we connect you to your soul, so that your soul guides you. And yes, we're still guiding you, but with a presence of your own structures, because in all the practices we do is all about creating sovereignty. So the person then can do it on their own, and et cetera, et cetera. And the person was ending up in illusionary spaces, kept ending up in this what seemed like previous incarnation, or what seemed like the higher vibrational space where the higher self or the soul is. But in reality, was all that was illusion inserted by ayahuasca.
Mm.
And created, the space was created like literally, if we come back to Hollywood, it was created like, one of those warehouses with like bright lights, beautiful trees, butterflies. Seems like high vibe place, but when you start poking around it, you're like, whoa, what's going on? This is not high vibe place. So yeah, so all these really interesting and funny things are unfolding right now as everything, all these add-on layers were put on Matrix V5, and all these egregors and etc. is part of the Matrix V5 world. And if I tie it back to V6, coming back to your question of virality, popularity, it will be super pure. So whoever, let's say, has energy that they're supposed to be a singer, a recognized singer, only if they have those codes, and only if they're pure and aligned with their energies and worked through their karma, they will be organically promoted by Matrix, by universe. There will be no way to cheat the system or tweak the system. So as a result, what we're observing now, the main marketing, and one thing I'm already seeing across, marketing for many products is stopping to work. And I can't remember if we chatted about this in the previous episode, but I'll touch on this again, and that's very important. Up to 2012, civilization lived in the faith of fear. So everything that civilization has known related to, let's call it spirituality, self-work, and just life in general in the society was driven by faith of fear, meaning that all the religion was based on fear. Oh, you're a sinner. If you don't do this, you're going to go to hell. Everything was driven by fear. That was the main instrument. 2012, it shifted to the faith of wonder, like impress me. Show me your magical skills, and then I will believe you. Show me beautiful marketing, and then I'll consider your product. And this shift that we talked about, or maybe we didn't talk about, where we talked about Uranus shifted to Gemini. This is a shift, and it's kind of seems like an astrological event that matters, but there's so many astrological events, but so it's less about astrology. It's more about the energy that has arrived on the planet Earth. Now we have shifted over the past few weeks to the faith of knowledge and truth. And so now it doesn't matter how much marketing, how much dollars you put into marketing, how shiny it is to create wonder. It doesn't matter how much Vatican or whatever other egregor will say, if you don't do this, you will go to hell. People are just not listening. And that's why, bringing back to the mention that people are speaking about governments, because governments run society based on faith of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And now nobody cares. They're like, it just doesn't apply to me. It doesn't work. Explain to me why I gotta pay taxes to you. You're wasting it on stealing the money, on giving it to wars, giving it to migrants who are not working, to whatever, but not supporting making my life better. And so now it's all about truth and knowledge. And another, I'll make another comment here. I was just rewatching Kingdom of Heaven. Have you seen that one?
No, what's that about?
Oh, highly recommend. Highly recommend. Kingdom of Heaven, but more as even specifically, I would recommend watching director's cut or extended cut or extended version, because director's cut it was around 30, 45 minutes longer, and it's about Jerusalem. It's about the one of the OG versions of Jerusalem and all the crusades and etc. And like a lot of things I'm talking about, I'm like getting goosebumps right now, was already seen back then. It's like what religion is truly. And it ties pieces together to what I'm saying right now. The energy of truth and knowledge came. And there's a guy, a father who was blessing or knighting his son, or whatever the procedure, whatever you call a procedure, turning him into a knight. And one part he said, and there's so many statements that are so deep, like you can pause and like just reflect. And overall movie, the message it delivers is very, very powerful. Many powerful messages, by the way. But the statement, part of the statement he said, I think it goes, always speak the truth, even when it leads to death. So like, and that's, I've lived my life where intuitively I was brought up, or something within me was always leading me to speak the truth, even if it was majorly not to my benefit. Then what I realized, and I just had this conversation with someone, because there was a moment in my life when I got really sidetracked. And that moment was when I moved to Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley is all smoke and mirrors. Everybody's saying, oh, it's a storytelling. But there is a very fine line between storytelling and straight up fudging the numbers and lying. And most of the companies in Silicon Valley lie. The reason I know, because I went down that road, I lied, take full responsibility. I played the game, and I started noticing that started sipping into other parts of my life, into relationships, friendships. I was like, I'm just going to open the door a little bit in the business, because that's how everybody operates the business here. And if I don't do this, then like I won't be able to win.
Mm-hmm.
And it just started going across my life. And I was like, what happened with me? Like I wouldn't like something I would never do in a friendship or other part of my life. I started kind of doing it, and I'm like, what happened? And like it was miserable time of life. And then I decided I'm like fed up with this. I don't know. It was all intuitive. I was not very aware. Now I'm reflecting as I'm sharing this story,
Yeah.
and reflecting in more, and I guess in a more conscious way. And what's interesting, where I want to bring it, the statement is, or the story is, then I decided to be like, I'm going to be honest. I don't care how this Silicon Valley operates. And I made sure all the data in the presentation was real data. Some data was not looking good. Like every business has part of data does not look good. And what I decided to do is, for the data that does not look good, I'm just going to have really good answers, or I'm going to have really good strategy how to work through those weaknesses in the business. And when I would pitch VCs, venture capitalists, they would be, well, a lot of numbers were really impressive about the business, but some numbers were not, right? And every business has that situation. And they were like, wow, these numbers are really impressive. They can't be real. I was like, what do you mean they can't be real? And they're like, we know everybody lies to us, everybody exaggerates, everybody fudges the numbers. That's why we spend so much time on due diligence and all that other stuff. So like, I'm pretty sure all these numbers will fall apart when we'll do the diligence. To me, it was a shock. I was like, what are you talking about? This is like, I can give you access to our database right now. This is real customer data. This is real, like you can pull whatever systems, and that's the data you'll see. You can pull any third party systems like Stripe or whatever payment systems to see the data. And they were confused. There's like, no, there's no way. And basically, so we gave them the access, and they were like blown away. And I was like, wow, this guy is speaking the truth. I'm not used to this. It's like the whole, and then what I started realizing is you don't have to play into the game that others are playing. That I just decided I'm just going to speak the truth. And what I started realizing, the feedback loop that started coming back through friends or through other people, what I started hearing, it was like, hey, you can blindly give Nikolai money or trust him. He will protect your back. And that's the reputation I started having in the industry, where everybody was like, backstabbing or doing funny things, lying, and etc. Where I'm going with this is, the time has come for all these people who've been frustrated. And it was difficult because in the moment I was like, it's like, well, like, I'm not going to raise money. And it's like, everybody's using this method. As a result, if I don't use this method, I won't succeed. But I guess somehow, growing up the way I grew up, there was that connection to spirit where I didn't care if something was against me, against my benefit, and could lead per se. Of course, I haven't faced the moments of death, but I faced the moments where I would have major issues in my life. Let's put it this way. And I was like, doesn't matter. I'll just say things as they are. And every time I said things as they are, somehow that massive issues just turned and dissipated. So where I'm going with this is, we've shifted into the energy of truth. It's the moment of speak the truth, whatever you're seeing and you've been afraid to speak up about, either it's a relationship or your politician in your neighborhood, to whatever it is. It's none of them have any protection anymore. Previously, that they had protection because so much energy was pulled out from people into these egregors, and they used the accumulation of those energy in egregors to protect themselves and to suppress whatever they wanted to suppress. And at the same time, Matrix was like, well, it's a matrix of evolutionary school. You're learning. So every experience is an experience. So we don't care if you end up in a shitty place. That's going to be a learning for you. But now, as we're shifting to V6 matrix, truth is a fundamental energy for that matrix.
So lots to unpack there.
Yeah, that was a long rant.
Let me stretch myself. So I wanna dive into the energies for a second. So previously you said there was the faith of fear, right?
Yes.
And then it was faith of wonder.
Yeah.
Now, is it, as we're moving through vibrational space, is that why it was such a short distance between faith of wonder and now the faith of truth, or the energy of truth? Or how did that arc from fear to wonder, and what was going on in that time of wonder?
One thing we've observed, tying it back to business, everybody is looking for hockey stick graph, exponential growth, right? That's what Silicon Valley loves. We call it hockey stick, right? Up to the right.
Oh yeah.
What's interestingly, it's some kind of a natural, universal, fractal movement of energy, and a lot of transformation happens in an exponential curve. And that's why we observe it constantly here. So, for example, computers existed for a long time, but they haven't reached consumer. It was like some offices got it, some government got it, very slow adoption. Slow, and boom, every household has it. So if you look at the transformation curves, all of them kind of mimic that hockey stick. And that's why VCs subconsciously, intuitively look for that. Is this a transformational technology or product? So that faith of fear to faith of wonder to faith of knowledge, we were just in that corner of, I think, so I'm right now sharing my assumption. I haven't looked into it deeply. I think it was because of that natural cycle, and faith and wonder happened to be that part before it starts curving up and the major shift happens. And so that part was very short, and now we're faith of truth and knowledge.
Okay. And what was the big difference between that period of wonder and the period of truth? Like what was meant to happen on the planet through wonder, or what was it meant to
Well,
achieve?
people. That's where we saw major decline of religion, right? Because religion was so faith of fear, and people were like, I'm not interested in like even the way upbringing shifted of children. Previously, you just smack the child and say behave, and then it went like to like negotiating, right? Hey, I'll take you to Disneyland if you do your chores. Everything shifted, right? And as a result, we started seeing a bunch of things declining, like religion, because it's purely built. You're a sinner. If you don't do the following things, we're in charge of here deciding if you go to a good place or not. It was all fear driven. The
Mm,
government also started shifting. The government was all punishment, and predominantly state punishment, but still they started, well, we got to somehow communicate to our clients, citizens differently, start promoting our countries and what we have to offer and all the benefits of our country and etc. Like, have you ever seen countries marketing themselves? I don't know, in like 80s, 90s? That wasn't really a thing. So that was that kind of shift, general shift of what people were responding to. And now is the shift to truth and knowledge. People don't respond to fear. Somebody's trying to scare somebody. I'm like, I've unsubscribed to that from that back in 2012. Not interested. But then now, like, I'm gonna market it to you. Here's look magic, and they're like, no, I want to understand how it works. I want to understand the essence of this, and I want to make sure it's real. It's not some kind of a, if we bring psychedelics back, illusionary awakening, or like, oh, I buy this magic pill or magic product and everything gets fixed in my life. No, explain to me why, explain how it works, because I want to understand.
mm. Got it. Got it.
Because
Got it.
everybody, because it's moving everybody to what we've discussed, sovereignty and self-sustainability. And you can only become self-sustainable and sovereign if you actually start understanding the foundation of things, foundation of your life.
So if we're looking at that, does so here's a question I have for you. Does, for example, social media or marketing even exist in a pure V6 environment? Like, are
Doesn't
the
exist.
ideas, yeah, they're totally
Zero. Gone. And that's
gone.
why it's dying. That's why Zuckerberg is freaking out. And he was supposed to create virtual reality. There's like so many memes are floating around. 80 billion spent on avatars without legs, and then whatever another 10 billion spent to add legs, and nobody still wanted to spend time in his virtual world. I think there's like 900 active users or something like that right now.
Oh yeah,
After so
the
much,
metaverse, the
yeah,
metaverse.
the metaverse, yeah. So he's freaking out because that was supposed to be the future of the company. That didn't work out. He sees all the numbers of social media dying rapidly, uh, and they're sucking at AI. so so they have no winning horse right now in this large holding, and so yeah, all that is going. The reason it still exists because those egregors are really big and they are taking energy from like billions of people, but the energy in those that accessible to those people, to those donors, has declined rapidly. So grand of scheme of things, it can like still have a little bit of a survive-ish time, but that time is very short.
So if we just look at I guess generalized marketing, or what, if for example, if social media dies, and we're there in the world of V6,
Yeah,
and maybe you're a barber, or maybe
yeah.
you're a meat packer, or you're selling chickens or whatever, who knows. um how are these people going to be sort of marketing their services in the future? Or at least what do you see as being the holistic way that that ends up happening?
The way it was in the 18th, 17th century, word of mouth. If you're a good barber, everybody will know you're a good barber. You will have bookings for the next months. If
Mm.
you're good, if a good, I don't know, meat packer or whatever, everybody will know the quality of your meat is exceptional, and that's basically, and that aligns with truth and knowledge. So it's like it's, nobody will refer their friend to someone unless they've experienced it and they had great results.
Got it. So the sense of, so it's almost like, do you think certain businesses then will go by the wayside? Because, like, if I were to look, for example, you look at the online space, I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
businesses exist because they're getting clients from all over the world, right? And so if we bring it back to where it's a referral only kind of business, doesn't that change that dynamic from being global to just being neighborhood, or how does it stay, or does it stay global in some
I
instances?
think, well, let's just look at the news. Everything is already on the surface. Everything is always on the surface, but people are either not willing to see it because it doesn't fit their narrative,
Mm-hmm.
or they're not attentive. Every country is trying to disconnect from global movement. Everybody nationalistic movement is insane.
Yeah.
So it's already happening. Everything is getting localized. Yes, and the movement will continue being localized, and it will be community based. Will it be limited to only community based? No, of course. There will be a component. We like the civilization went too far on a global element where you buy meat from Jose in Uruguay, and you don't even know Jose, right?
Yeah.
And you can't even know him. So and that's why things kind of got out of whack. And now people are like, well, if Jose gets upset at America at some point in time, we might not have cheap meat. We will only have American meat that now is, let's call it, premium and expensive. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just like playing out an example here, right?
Yeah.
And now a huge chunk of population has no access to meat because they don't have a Joe friend who runs his own farm and you can buy it from. So we are shifting back to more localized, distributed type of civilization where, like, blockchain is a great example. That's how universe works. There are nodes, and every node, there is a copy of everything. So every community should have a copy of all infrastructure to not only survive, but continue enjoyable life if Iran gets bombed. But that's not the case today. Iran gets bombed, bunch of flights get canceled in Germany, and Germans are freaking out about their vacations, right? So, and all the movement that's happening is going back to decentralization and what I mentioned earlier: anarchy, self-governance, own infrastructure, understanding how things work so you can run own infrastructure. And the beauty of technology today, you can even run infrastructure for a person of one, like septic tank, solar panels with little wind farm, with, or if you have a stream on your land, whatever, right? Batteries got so cheap, solar got so cheap. Like, you can literally live in a house and be fully sovereign, with, of course, exception of hard to run your own oil extraction company and refinery. So hence, but with the new technology of electric car and a solar panel and batteries, you're like, well, now I'm not even limited in my movement. So like, everything that is necessary for enjoyable life is accessible in a small format that can be operated by a consumer.
So if we're looking at all these shifts, and especially like
Yeah.
you said, we're moving towards sovereignty, and we can see that in terms of different nationalistic movements. Do you think that then, as this movement towards that is happening energetically, is there a piece of that that also is bringing a sense of understanding behind, for example, what's going on in Iran at the moment, like in terms of these breakdown of all these structures? It was kind of funny. Like, I was I was reading the news lately, and you have all these structures breaking down at one time, right? It's like
Yeah.
you got the choke point
OPEC.
in Iran, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Then you have the UAE saying that they're gonna
Yeah.
leave OPEC.
Didn't they depart as of May 1st?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Then I was reading some really interesting articles, which
Yeah.
is, well, the downstream of that effect could be Saudi Arabia going to war against UAE. All right.
Mm.
So you got these other players in the
Yeah.
region that are
Yeah.
because they don't like each other, right? And now we're not part of the same cartel. Well, gloves can come off, right?
Yeah. We don't
But
need to
then
be nice anymore or pretend
and
to be
then
nice.
and then you have the aspect of, well, now, um, I'm going to butcher the name of it. It starts with a T, but there was a massive refinery in Russia that, of course, then got
Tuapsi or something like that. Yeah.
exactly, that got
Yeah.
blown up. So there's a concentrated effort, whether it's just the powers that be or it's a layer higher, to really redefine what energy is just on the planet,
That's
or who has
exactly
access
what's
to it.
well. That's exactly what's happening. Earlier I mentioned there are specific major flows of energy, and
Yeah.
one of the major flow of energy towards sovereignty. How do you push people towards sovereignty? You show them how centralized system keeps them a slave, right? And now you're like, wow, I might not like diesel in Germany is over €3 a liter. Like, it's insanity. So you're like, okay, you don't even need to be genius. You don't need to be wise. You're like, previously I paid, €5 to go back to work and back. Now I pay 15. My salary hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And I do this 20 times a week. What am I going to do? Time for electric vehicle. Oh, and electricity, by the way, is 3 times more expensive than any other parts of the planet because we've decided to shut down nuclear power, all the nuclear power in Germany, right? And this is happening everywhere. I'm just giving Germany as an
Yeah.
example. Maybe it's time for solar panels. So they're like, all this is so the energy is foundational in the universe. First, energy happens, then it plays out in some interesting way in this dimension that we're in, and now we're just watching the theater of how it's playing out. Oh, okay, it's time for more sovereignty, for anarchy or self-governance, right? So let's start pushing people. Like almost every country's now decided to introduce exit tax and wealth tax, and like everybody's going crazy because all government budgets are running low. Like yesterday, before yesterday, EU did an extensive research and published it on how to tax people without getting them frustrated, how to introduce additional taxes without getting them frustrated and leave the country. And that's literally the research. So guess what that does? Oh, already haven't been trusting the government. They're not really maintaining the street in front of my house. The healthcare went down, and I can't even see a doctor. If I see one, it's like it's useless. And the list goes on, goes on, goes on. I was like, maybe I'll withdraw to another location, or I'm just gonna revolt and not pay taxes.
Well, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So, as these structures are falling,
Yeah.
right? I think one of the issues, and I'd like your opinion on this, is that, well, what is the backup, or where is the backup that a wannabe sovereign citizen can go? Because, for example, if all these different governments are doing this in a coordinated fashion, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say, for example, right? Let's presuppose the UK is exit tax, and then France at the same time they're saying, "Oh, we're doing exit tax."
Yeah.
Everybody's doing it at the same time to close the system so that, well, it doesn't really matter, right? Wherever you go, it's a problem.
But is it? Serbia is not doing it. Bosnia is not doing it. Montenegro is not doing it. And I can probably find another 50. Georgia is not doing it. Armenia is not doing it. I don't know. Uzbekistan is not doing it. The list goes on, right? And this is just this region or the countries that are in kind of that I've like recently visited or talked about with someone. So there are places where people can relocate. So it's like it is happening, but at the same time, the solutions are being offered. But at the same time, it's like you don't have to move. You stay, okay, you pay more tax, and there will be a threshold point where enough people got frustrated where either they start playing funny things around tax. Like in Russia, very few, like in the first place, not many people like paying tax there and find all types of creative structures to work around this. And like, okay, German mindset or culture, do everything by the rule. Russian is quite different. Do everything to figure out how to bend the rule to your advantage, or circumvent the rule, because rule in a Russian culture, rule is usually penalizing. And that's how Russian people grew up, because they were always penalized by the system and they were just fed up. So that is already built in their culture and DNA to be like, and Russia right now drastically increasing taxes because of the war and other things that are unfolding. Guess what's happening? A lot of businesses are moving to cash-based businesses. They're like, okay, cool, increase taxes. We have solutions to that as well. Whereas before, because there were advantages to being registered as a solar proprietor. So they just registered 15 solo proprietorship structures, distributed income, and that's how they fit in low tax bracket. Like one of the schemes in Russia, right? Of course, then the revenue agency caught on to that, and so people will start doing that, and that's the time of being a vegetable is over, because it was also energetically was difficult to be sovereign, because there was this energy that was kind of the faith of fear. Everybody was scared. Then everybody was blinded with shiny things. And there was a lot of fogginess and distortion. So it was difficult to figure out if this fear is real and they will be like punished or not. But because that was a dominating energy, everybody leaned into believing it, because that was the energy on the planet, right? It was supported. But now it's not supported anymore. So people are quitting. And I was like, why am I fearing? I'll just do what's right for me, not do what's right for Germany or Russia, because they're giving me all these big political statements: protect the country, protect the flag, you gotta work. Like Mert said, guys, Germans, you're not working enough. Why are you retiring so early? Let's extend the retirement age, and let's extend work week from 40 to 60.
Yeah.
And people are like, so we're paying for all these migrants who don't lift a finger. Our bridges are collapsing. Trains are not running. And you're telling me I'm not working enough? Are you for real? And people are like, not only people are fed up, but now they have the energy to say it. And we're going to start seeing the collapse of government structures, very rapid collapse of government structures. It's by the way, it's already internally fully broken. Let's be honest. All governments on this planet, I shouldn't say all, most of governments on this planet are bankrupt, because they run constant deficit and they have crazy debt. But, when the music stops and we're out of chairs, there's nowhere to sit. And previously, at least, there were, let's call them the imperialists, right? United States, Western Europe, could go and rob African countries, Asian countries. There was this places to rob and bring democracy to, right? And that's what was supporting this sham of what we call capitalism. Because if you really look at the economics of capitalism, it has to constantly expand. The revenue has to grow, the profit has to grow, but it's unsustainable. So once you've, let's say, consumed all the population of United States, you have to go to external market. But they ran out of markets. So like we're at a point where we've reached the breaking point of so many systems, and they're all overlapping at the same time, which creates a possibility for the paradigm shift. And I should paraphrase it. It's not possibility. It is part of the movement, underlying energetic movement of the planet. We're flying, 7 million kilometers a day towards higher vibrational space. And in a higher vibrational space, lying, manipulating, stealing, grifting, the list goes on, are not the energies that fit in. Those are lower vibrational energies. They cannot coexist like oil and water. They get pushed out. And that's what we're experiencing right now. Those energies are being pushed out.
Interesting. You know, lastly, something that I wanted to just kind of touch on around, this idea of popularity and virality and all that sort of stuff. Because I was noticing this even with my news cycles, and it made me think about it, right? And this was, first we had the rise of the so-called influencer. And I like
Hmm.
how they use that term, because it's like, well, now everybody can be an influencer. And it's funny because earlier you said, well, somebody has to be allotted in their soul and spirit, like
Yeah.
that you'd be able to be one,
Yes, correct.
which maybe is a small, very small percentage.
Not necessarily.
Okay. But it
Yeah.
just seems that, well, now, I mean, if you were to ask people in America, everybody wants to be an influencer. Like,
Yeah.
that's what my dream now is, to be not a doctor or anything, but I want to be
Because
an
it's a
influencer.
copycat behavior that was brought up in society as a value, right?
Yeah.
Copy other successful person and what they do versus understand what your capabilities and happiness is and do that, which is aligning with your purpose.
Yeah, exactly. So, but one thing I was noticing, and I
Yeah.
wanted you to speak about, if you've paid attention to, or you can feel into the energy, there seems to be a rise in influencers killing each other.
Really? Is that
Yeah, I've seen this now quite a bit, right? I mean, there was
okay?
recently I watched, it was
I'm watching
some
spiritual egregors killing each
yeah,
other, so I
some
guess maybe that's
influencer lady
fractally.
ran over her competitor influencer and killed her. Then
Wow.
you had remember, there was a gun gunfight in Vegas where someone blasted another guy because he was his YouTube competitor, like, and a lot of these different things.
Okay. So
And
things are better than I thought.
yeah. And so one of the things is, I want to know, well, what are the energetic forces kind of driving influence culture in general? And then is a lot of this stuff that's going on, is it almost, I hate to say it, but almost like MK Ultra related sort of mass mind control, or like mass hypnosis, like where these things are getting to a point that now people are willing to, kill each other because of clout, or because of status, because of things that we would never think, well, would be a reason to just go
Yeah.
whack somebody, right?
Like 20 years ago, that would be an insane thought.
A completely insane, like,
Yeah, people will look at you and say, you got to go to psychiatric facility. Now it's a norm.
yeah.
Well, water and oil. So those low vibrational energies exist in humans, right? As their karmic energies, or as something they've accumulated over this incarnation, whatever it is, and they have to come to the surface. And as they're coming to the surface, they're magnified. Like, and hence, if that person who killed another influencer could have been wishing that influencer death verbally already for a year or two. So there was that energy that already existed. And now it just gets magnified so much that previously a person would explore it at a level of a dark secret thought while they're alone in a room. Now it just has to come out because it's oil that has been suppressed to be at the bottom of the bottle of the water. There's no more. Whatever was holding it at the bottom is not there anymore. It has to come out. And now, because it has been in so many people, so many of those things have been suppressed for such a long time, it's like a spring. Another analogy, it's like a spring that has been condensed over years and years and years and years. And now that whatever was holding it doesn't have a strength to hold or breaks, and it just shoots back in such a aggressive expression.
Got it. Okay.
So that's why we're seeing so many more people are, well, we don't need to go far. Just turn on any news channel and look at any politician. They went completely mental. In the same day, they say contradicting things, like straight up lie in almost every country. It doesn't matter, like if it's Trump or Putin or I don't know, Mertz or whatever. Like I'm picking on 3 countries right now,
Yeah.
but it's like if you think about even that situation, even at 10 years ago, you'd be like, is this person, do they need mental help, like mental health problems going on there? Like, you couldn't be that obviously lost and insane. Now it's like, it's okay. Everybody, because everybody's is like, now all these energies are going to the surface so fast, so magnified, that it's like they like, then they look at a Trump who like just says nonsense half of the time, and then it contradicts itself. But that's because it's also happening on the ground in a population of America, so it's hard to judge another person when you're doing exactly the same thing with your friends or with your boss, with whoever.
Well, and that's the other thing that on my map of reality I can't quite understand, which is okay, everything is so blatant
Yeah,
on every level,
yeah.
and yet it does seem that there's a big chunk of the populace that can't see it,
Mm.
right? But it's so it's so out there. I mean, the politicians aren't even hiding it. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, people talk about a war between Ukraine and Russia, but it's
yeah,
a war between Russia and the US, and the US
exactly.
supplies all the data. I mean, now you've got drones flying half the way across Russia that the Ukrainians have no ability to
Yeah,
actually do. So we can start looking at all these things where, like, the facade that, you know, this person isn't involved or that person isn't involved, it just falls away. And you can see it going on in Iran as well, and
yeah,
in
yeah,
so many different ways. And it's not just politics in those areas. I mean, it's worldwide. We can see the politics playing out where now you more and more everything's coming to the surface, and the statements that even the politicians will make absolutely no sense. But
yeah.
I don't see any pushback from the populace. So is it now that, again, the populace has been so covertly manipulated so that they are so passive, they're so unwilling to do anything? Or is that apathy really just sovereignty coming online where the populace says, you know what, there's nothing we can do, so we're not going to try and do anything. We're just going to go internal and figure out a way to save ourselves in some fashion?
Well, there are many questions in
I
your
know.
question. Yeah. So
Yeah.
number one, everything else on the surface is because the energy of truth and knowledge. Everything is coming to the surface. And by the way, the reason a lot of politicians say things as they are or say nonsense, because in many scenarios they can't even like lie anymore. So they actually speak the nonsense that is in their head. And as we know, most politicians have been selected for extensive amount of nonsense in their head, so they can be controlled, manipulated, managed, etc., etc. So everything's coming to the surface. Everybody has to speak the truth. When you lie, the truth still comes out. The list goes on. What are you talking about? The chunk of populace still being blind? That's the chunk of we're going through separation right now, and the separation is subset of population that is staying on this planet through this transition, and those are the ones that have the wise eyes wide open and see what's going on, and those are the people that are starting to speak up in one way or another. Or even if you're not speaking up, you're just making choices that aligned with you. You're not serving anymore a flag, an idea, an ideology. People start serving their own sovereignty and self-sustainability. So that's the chunk of population that's transitioning to six matrix and staying on this planet. The other chunk of population is part of it, no souls, like biorobots, young souls, souls that couldn't figure out up and down, and made those decisions and choices to stay blind or choose wherever that low vibrational energy is moving. So they're like kind of have attraction to still play the low vibration games. So they'll just exit incarnations and they'll incarnate in low vibrational sector of universe that matches the games they desire to play, like status, like, I don't know, stealing, lying, and the list goes on. So we're going right now through separation. And what's interesting about the separation, what we're sensing and seeing is the souls have made choices, that the ones that are staying and through which avatar they're staying, because we chatted briefly about some souls have multiple avatars that they connected to. So they've already made the choices. And of course, there are exceptions to all the rules. Like some souls still have opportunity to jump in the last wagon, but that's more exception to the rule than the rule. Right now, whoever's staying is staying, and whoever chose to follow, like, let's say, this low vibrational values, where you want to still maintain pyramidal structures rather than be equal, sovereign, and co-create from that place. You choose pyramidal structures. You choose any type of low vibrational energies, greed, anger. The list goes on. You choose AI as your god. Whatever permutations of that, you're getting off this planet in one way or another. For some, that was the ones that were carrying a lot of low vibrational negative energy. That exit has been accelerated, like in wars of Russia, Ukraine, in Iran, Israel, the Middle East, and etc., where conflicts are actually taking out people. For the rest, where there are no conflicts, the pattern that we're observing: depression, health problem. Depression is an indication of depression, health problem, exit from incarnation, exit from this body. So depression is an indication of lack of energy. So so the person is not aligned with their soul and spirit, or with general movement of energy on this planet, where this planet is going, with the new structures they're starting to emerge. So, and that's why all these egregors that I was mentioning in the beginning of a conversation are fighting, because many of these, in that chunk of populace, as you call them, are the ones that are still, like, praying Vatican and thinking this is the best thing since sliced bread and etc. Those are the ones that are actually starting to experience extensive depression because they're lacking energy. As a result, Christian egregor is freaking out and starting to fight or eat Joe Dispenza's piece of a pie or Tony Robbins, whereas before didn't care.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on. And so basically, um, there will be many people who will not stick around. The timeline, I don't know. But everybody has a choice. Everybody has a free will to work on themselves, align, and establish your own energetic source, so you're not dependent on Christianity to supply you with energy, because V5 matrix is stopping to supply energy to those avatars, because all the energy is shifting to V6. V6 energy is flowing only people who are getting aligned with who they truly are, with their purpose, clearing negative traits of character, harmonizing the negative traits of character, and shifting to this new reality. And one more thing, important thing I want to throw in here, because there's a lot of confusion out there, and I've touched on Joe Dispenza's and Eckhart Tolle's and whatever. There's major misunderstanding between three terms: esoterics, metaphysics, and spirituality. A lot of people right now, by doing esoterics and metaphysics, think they're doing spirituality. Those are completely separate concepts. Esoterics is a study of influencing objects using energy. So it's manifestations, occult rituals, shamanic rituals, and etc., where people do specific things, energetic rituals, or specific practices to influence something or someone energetically. That's esoterics, the study of that. Metaphysics is the study of how all the systems in universe work, how this matrix works, how this planet works, how universe at large works, what are universal laws, like why hydrogen and oxygen are held together to produce water. It's part of it. That's metaphysics. That's all the knowledge of how all the systems works. Spirituality is the work you do to connect with your soul and spirit. Whereas what's happening, most people in Joe Dispenza and Tony Robbins, Christianity, doesn't matter. pick an egregor. Wanted to get access to esoteric knowledge so that they could use energetic influence to change discomforts of their external world. So they want to adjust their surrounding world so it matches their internal distortions so it doesn't trigger them, which is, when you really think about it, is idiotic. So a person has a distortion, which is basically a place where they get triggered. Mm-hmm. And they do extensive work, spend a lot of time studying esoterics, metaphysics, and etc. to figure out how to make an external world as crooked as they are. And that's what a lot of what's in the West called New Age spirituality was. Very few of them actually worked on spirituality, which is harmonizing their triggers, their inharmonious or distorted qualities of character, traits of character, and aligning with their purpose. And if we really summarize what is spirituality, what does it take to align with your soul and spirit, connect, synchronize with your soul and spirit, harmonize the distortions in your character. So anywhere where you get triggered, like by someone, something, and etc., that needs to be harmonized. Second, find an activity, creative activity that gives you genuine joy, which is basically, in other words, aligned with your purpose. That is spirituality. And yes, we can use esoterics, like energetic influence, to influence energy within us to help us heal some kind of distortion, versus using some kind of rituals to influence the person who triggered you at the office so they don't, they don't trigger you anymore. That's like backwards. That's like trying to rub a mirror to change the image. And so the reason it's important to share this is because there's probably a lot of like people who are listening to this have been doing, because like when I started down this path, like I wanted to learn a lot of like energetic instruments to influence my world, just to realize it's actually, that application is useless. When I applied those instruments towards myself to find inner harmony, balance, then the whole world around me became harmonious. And I didn't need to spend even a second, coming back to the example I gave you with the car in the central parking, wide open with the doors, not a single thing missing.
Yeah.
Like, so when my inner world is that, then the rest of the world for me is that as well. So, and then given now there are these fights between egregors, who is better? You can still get the instruments from Joe Dispenza, from Christianity, from Bible, from Quran. Pick whatever you want. As long as the tools and instruments you're getting from there, you're actually applying to work on yourself rather than to kill your neighbor or, to forsaken your ex-partner or whatever it is, or to do a manifestation for more money in the bank account. That's not how it works. Yes, before V5 matrix, it was possible because there were distortions, there were those add-on layers where you could have traded your life energy, do all types of rituals to attract energy of money. Now it does not work. If you want to drain your life energy rapidly, go ahead, donate it to those egregors that are already dying, and you will accelerate your own exit from this planet, which is self-selection, which, helps everyone else as well.
Oh, wow. Well, that is it for this week. Yeah, fascinating just to see how all these different egregors suck energy, and also where are we like not giving our energy to them, and where are we starting to be sovereign? So
yeah, like one more thing I'll add. I talked about the religious egregors or spiritual egregors. Mm-hmm. The egregors of countries suck energy. If somebody is very patriotic, Germany, Ukraine, Russia, they donate a lot of their energy to that egregor, and I will happily take it. And because we're in a process of destruction or dissolution is a better word of those egregors, shrinkage of those egregors, they are trying to take as much energy as they can from the followers. So the image, the analogy I would give you, it's like right now people, let's call whatever strong connection people have, let's imagine it as a owner of the yacht. Like, let's say somebody's patriotic towards Germany or United States. It's like they own a yacht that they love, which is they call it United States. They're sitting on the yacht. The yacht is sinking, but they're so attached. They're not willing to disconnect and step off. So they're gonna sink with the yacht. And that's that self-selection, and that's that part of the populace who won't be able to, or choose not to detach and say, I still want to play the patriotism game. I still want to play, I don't know, magic game by manifesting bunch of money using Joe Dispenza method, etc., etc. So if anybody wants to stay attached and really hold on to these old structures, like I'm more Christian than I was ever before. You want to stay attached to those sinking yachts? Good luck. You have a choice. Disconnect and start looking inwardly and start figuring out yourself. Start becoming a harmonious person. And everybody has a free will in this universe. And one more thing I'll add. Even though a lot of stuff we're discussing right now, it's like destruction, the systems collapse, people exiting their incarnations or lives. All that is a very positive experience. It's an experience of transformation. We also choose how to respond to it. If we see, as well as probably very few will be listening to this podcast who are in the camp of being attached to their yacht. But if they do, to them it will be very triggering and very painful to listen to this. And if for you any part of this, for anyone who is listening, any part of the podcast is triggering or like generates fear or any kind of anger trigger or whatever, this is your opportunity to turn back into yourself and ask yourself, what are you attached to? Where are you still not harmonized? Because the process that is unfolding is very positive and constructive. We're moving to high vibrational space, and we are transforming as a civilization to be a better version of ourselves.
That's it. High vibe, baby.
High vibe.
High vibe. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to more vibrations, more matrix, and more catastrophic dysfunction around the world coming at you next week.
Till the next one.
Till then, brother.